Turn your life around for the final bell. It's now or never, you have to change well. It's now or never, you must change well. Hello, and welcome to another podcast from Change Well. Now today is going to be a little different. I'm going to go on a little rant. I'm going to warn about you all about this beforehand, but the rant is going to be for civility. So it's a good rant, and it's all about the power of civility to help us all to change well and to listen to each other. Now the other day I turned off the news because I just couldn't take it anymore. Whether you watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. People pointing fingers, people shouting at people, and not listening to each other, not trying to solve problems, and much worse than that. And as I shut down the vitriol on my TV, I asked, how has this nation and other nations devolved into an us versus them mentality? You know, it was not always that way. We once had civil discourse and the social institutions, clubs, Little League, community centers, and other things that brought us together. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from a guy you may say, oh, wow, he's a conservative guy. But he wasn't always. He was Walter Mondale's speechwriter. Is Charles Krauthammer. I know he passed away 2 years ago, but he gave a good explanation of this and what is important in life. But the most formative, most important influence on an individual is not government. It is civil society. Those elements of the collectivity that lie outside government. Family, neighborhood, church, Rotary Club, PTA, the voluntary associations that Tocqueville understood to be the genius of America and sources of its energy and freedom. He is going back there a little bit with Tocqueville, back when America was just forming, but it's still true. We have gotten extreme, but it was not always that way. We did not always launch ourselves into the opposing sides of some X feed or Facebook at the drop of the hat, but rather listen to the opposing sides of people that we respected in our community. We looked for the similarities. We may have different viewpoints, like a lot of my friends, and we'll get to this in a second. A lot of my friends at Crosswicks have different viewpoints than me, but I love them all. And because we grew up together in the same community and we had the same institutions. We sought out the commonalities that brought us together and the spark of humanity that resides in each of us. We listened to one another and learned from one another at PTAs, Little Leagues, community centers, and institutions of everyday life. You know, we need to return to these social institutions. You know, instead of Little League, now go to your kid's soccer game and turn away from the emptiness of social media. Except this podcast. The best example of a community of sharing and caring is the town that I grew up in, Crosswicks. Crosswicks is a little town in New Jersey. You don't usually think of New Jersey with civility, especially when you're driving a turnpike, but Crosswicks was. It's right outside of Trenton. My town's main claim to fame was it was a launch pad of the revolution. The Battle of Trenton launched from my little town of Crosswicks in the community center. We used to have a swing on this tree. Unfortunately, got hit by a lightning bolt. Believe it or not, this old tree that had a swing on it that we said that George Washington swung one of his kids on before he did the Battle of Trenton. In Crosswicks, we had a mixture of liberals and conservatives that all got along and progressed for the betterment of our community and our country. Thinking about my hometown, I started thinking, how did this nation, how did everybody, the collective Crosswicks, become so crosswise? What is causing this vitriol. And ultimately, if we don't stop it, will lead to the demise of democracy. Simply this: when you cross the wicks, like Crosswicks, of a candle, the lights burn brighter. But when you get crosswise, the fire of freedom becomes extinguished. So tonight I will ruminate on what made our little hamlet of Crosswicks, and so makes it, by the way, bring people together instead of pulling them apart. And the answer is quite simple. It was community organizations not affiliated with governments, Facebook, or these corporate entities that just try to control your life. It was organizations by the people, for the people, and run by the people. And let me talk about 3 of them. First is Little League. Back before the day of club soccer run by professionals, we had Little League. It was run by volunteers who wanted to teach kids a sport and bring communities together. I'm now over a certain age. It's 6 times 10, and can still remember every moment of every Chesterfield Red Sox game versus Chesterfield Black Sox game. The whole community came together to watch the teams compete. There may have been some arguments on the fields of friendly strife, but what I remember the most was being with my friends, learning from my father, who was my coach, and other parents, and sharing fun with the community. I'm not trying to cut down club soccer, which is also a unifying organization and is more prevalent now. But there is something different learning from the people of the community instead of professionals that are getting paid. Back in the day, you didn't have paid coaches. You had your dad, the friend next door, and they taught you how to play sports. The next one is Scouts. Sometimes Scouts are given a name. I can't talk to Girl Scouts, but I can talk about being a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout. These institutions brought together people from all walks of life for fellowship and fun. Both my mother as a den mother and my father as a Cub master were involved. We got to learn how to compete fairly. I used to love these things. They were the Pinewood Derby and the rocket races. And you would build your little car or your rocket and see who would win. We also learned how to develop our skills and help one another with our various badges. As part of a den, pack, or troop, you learned how to cooperate and care for those in your group. You also learned about how, through differences and diversity, you can create strength. I remember some of our kids on the Boy Scout troop, I didn't like them particularly, but when we were in a contest, they could figure out how to hook a fish better than I, and I would listen to them. I will never forget that. The Boy Scout troop was able to take disparate talents and succeed in a weekend camp out. I think we came in second, but that was a lot higher because we relied on all the different talents of the different boys that were involved in Boy Scouts. Let's go on to the third point. One of the things that people discount now, the community center and the library. The heart of Crosswicks was the community center and the library. We had summer programs at both institutions. And I first fell in love with books at the library. The library, if you read a certain amount of books, you would go on a little luncheon and they gave you one book that they paid for it. But you had to read. And that's how I fell in love with the thing I love the most, books, where I learned things, okay? And also I learned how to draw a cartoon, dog and cat. Believe it or not, in this summer festival, I learned how to, summer training, I learned how to draw a dog and a cat. That's all I can draw that looks good. Everything else is stick figures. But I learned how to draw a dog and a cat, and believe it or not, I was very proud of it. Now, one of these days, I might try to draw my dog Boots and show you all on one of my blogs. The other thing was, it's coming up right now. We participated in these beautiful parties for Halloween and Christmas. It didn't matter the color of your skin, your political institution, or your religion. Everybody came out for these, and all the people in Crosswicks were brought together to share in fellowship and learn new skills. In the end, is really what you learn and apply, rather than what you earn and deny that makes a mark on this world. So get out in your community and get Crosswicks, not crosswise. Now, these are just 3 of the institutions that brought us together in Crosswicks. I will never forget the friends I made. I talked to a lot of them, sometimes virtually, sometimes real time, even today. And, this was when I was in elementary school. And even 40 to 50 years later, when my friends from Crosswicks expressed their disparate views, I listen and I learn. I listen to them because I formed this bond in Crosswicks, in these institutions outside of government. Government can't take away our humanity. We need to get back to the practice of seeing your neighbor next door and intermediate institutions to bring people together. Let us all, as a nation, cross the wicks and make the light of our common humanity shine brighter. And in that way, you can change well. So until the next time, change well.